While playing in their father's laboratory, three youngsters accidentally activate a time machine that takes them straight to the Cretaceous, where they are adopted by a T-Rex who will face any danger to protect her young. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Dino Time, from 2012. In a themed town called Dino Land, Ernie is skateboarding when his mother calls to ask if he's coming, as she needs to go out and can't leave the store without anyone. As the boy says he's getting closer, Sue puts a sign on the door saying they'll reopen in 15 minutes and leaves for her appointment, but as soon as she leaves, Ernie arrives at the store and adds a 0 to the sign, postponing the reopening until 2.5 hours from now. With so much time on his hands, the boy starts walking around the city and passes in front of the Dino Land Natural History Museum, as well as Mystery Rock, a mushroom-shaped pile of rocks with an engraving that dates back to the Cretaceous period, something that intrigues scientists to this day, as at the time there was still no human to draw the picture. Just ahead, Ernie finds two older boys picking on his friend Max and decides to help him out, asking the boy to hold the skateboard while he carries it away from the bullies. Safe, Max tells Ernie that his father has made new discoveries that will be exhibited the next day, but being a complete nutter, the boy goes to the museum with the intention of breaking into the reserved area and seeing the fossils before everyone else. As they pass through the entrance, Julia, Ernie's sister, hides in the bushes and starts taking pictures of the boys to snatch them, following them around the museum to get more evidence. Taking advantage of the fact that the guard is asleep, the friends go to the entrance of the reserved area, which for some reason is unlocked, breaking in quite easily while Julia chases them. Exploring the area, the boys find a fossil covered by a tarpaulin and decide to take the fabric off, but as Max is getting closer, Ernie notices infrared motion detectors and throws his friend high up, knocking him over without touching the laser. When it's his turn, the boy grabs his skateboard and performs an insane maneuver, jumping over the infrared beam and finally reaching his friend. Together, they remove the tarpaulin from above the fossil and discover that it is a Sarcosuchus, a Cretaceous crocodilian that could have weighed up to 4 tons. While the two analyze the fossil, Julia films everything with her cell phone and decides to throw a coin into the infrared detector, activating the alarm that warns the guards about the presence of the invaders. Thinking it's a spy, the men run into the restricted area and start looking for the intruders, but Ernie and Max manage to hide under the tarpaulin and use the skateboard to escape. Even though they can't see, the boys know the museum extremely well and manage to walk through the corridors without hitting any walls, but the problem lies in the countless fossils they hit. After destroying half the exhibition, Ernie goes home and tries to convince his mother that he hasn't done anything wrong, but everyone in town already knows what happened and Sue decides to ground her son, ordering him not to leave his room until dinner. In the room, Ernie is very frustrated when he realizes that the bedroom window is open and begins to think about whether he should obey his mother or not, coming to the conclusion that the best option is to disobey her and jump through the roof while Julia watches from her room. Unaware that his sister is watching him, Ernie goes to Max's house to spend time with his friend, going straight to the garage where his father's main inventions are kept. Happy to see Dr. Santiago again, the boy excitedly asks about the time machine he is developing, but the scientist replies that even after 4 years working on the project, he still hasn't managed to make the device work. As he needs to fix the vacuum cleaner, Santiago goes into the living room and leaves the kids alone in the garage, but as soon as he comes out, Julia appears and takes more photos of her brother, saying that she's going to tell her mother that he's run away from his punishment. Furious, Ernie begins to chase after the youngest girl while knocking over soda on the high-voltage cables, as well as tipping over almost the entire can on the control panel, causing a short circuit in the machine, which shuts down and begins to spin and glow wildly. Inside the device, they feel everything shaking non-stop until suddenly, everything stops, and the ground begins to shake, accompanied by roars that get closer and closer. Frightened, the boys start arguing and Ernie tries to fiddle with the control panel to see what's going on, but ends up opening the capsule by accident, revealing a huge T-Rex that approaches to investigate. Then it's revealed that they've ended up in the exact location of a Tyrannosaur's nest, but luckily for them, the time machine looks like an egg and now the female thinks they're her offspring. Realizing that she won't attack, Ernie grabs his skateboard and starts spinning in circles around the new mother dinosaur, causing her to smash her tail into the time machine and knock over the power key. Happy with her babies, the female begins to clean up the supposed newborns and calls the other dinosaurs in the valley to come and see them. Unaware that they are coming face to face with humans, the creatures congratulate Tyra on her babies and tell her that she's going to be a great mother. However, some of the dinosaurs are more concerned about whether she will continue to protect them from the Sarcos brothers. To reassure them, the female replies that nothing will change and that she will take care of the babies until they grow up and can also protect them from the crocodiles, but a female Triceratops says that they are strange and Tyra gets very offended, kicking the visitors out with the excuse that her babies need to sleep. Afraid of being trapped forever, Julia suggests that they return as soon as possible and asks Max how to rewire the time machine, making the boy realize that something is missing and that they won't be able to travel until they find the object again. At that moment, Ernie sees the key lying on the ground and decides to pick it up, putting it in his pocket while saying that he will return it as soon as he has finished exploring the area. Realizing how worried his sister is, the boy tries to reassure her by saying that the key must have fallen out while they were landing and that they should find it again in a day or two. But Julia is still afraid and Ernie decides to change the approach, making her realize how incredible it is that they are in Dinoland millions of years before the city was founded. Wanting to explore the place, the boy grabs his skateboard and tries to get out of the nest while Tyra is busy clearing the land. But as soon as he starts to move, the female stops everything she's doing and blocks the way, pushing the boy back into the nest. Just then, the humans notice a bush moving and Dodger comes out of the bushes to meet his foster siblings. Excited, the agitated dinosaur jumps on Julia and starts talking about the adventures they're about to go on, but just like the other dinos, he also finds the appearance of humans strange. While everyone is distracted, a trio of rather bizarre birds see that Tyra has babies and go down to the lower valley to tell the Sarko brothers, saying that all they have to do is take the egg to convince the T-Rex to come to them. In this way, they would fight 2 against 1 in a terrain they know very well, which would make it easier for them to win and allow them to live in the high valley, with countless dinosaurs to feed on. Knowing that the female will not leave the babies, the Sarcosuchus duo order the birds to go to the nest and steal the egg when Tyra moves away, forcing the trio to return to the surface with a difficult mission. The next morning, Max and the others go out to look for the power key when they hear the sounds of predators in the distance. Frightened, they run through the woods and are accidentally knocked down by Dodger, who makes them all fall into the river. From above, the bird sees his adopted siblings being carried away by the current and decides to jump in after them, climbing onto some logs that are floating by to surf through the water. Finding this extremely amusing, Ernie also slides through the water while jumping over logs in the middle of the path. Shortly afterwards, they reach a rapids and hit a rock hard, causing the power key to fly out of the boy's shorts. Without realizing what has just happened, Ernie uses his skateboard as a paddle to dodge the rocks and jump over the obstacles, but they approach a waterfall and he can't slow down in time, plummeting from a gigantic height. A few meters away, the trio of birds try to approach Tyra's nest and one of them ends up stepping on the power key, which gets stuck between its fingers. With great difficulty, he manages to remove the object from his feet and swallows it without a second thought, putting an end to the children's chances of returning to the future. With no idea what has just happened, the boys get out of the water and come across a real dinosaur paradise. Satisfied with everything he's seen, Ernie tells them they can go home now and tries to get the key from his pocket, then despairs when he realizes he no longer has it. But before he can even tell her what happened, Tyra appears in a rage and carries the babies back to the nest. In the present, Sue goes to call her children for dinner and realizes that neither of them is home, but as she knows Ernie very well, she immediately assumes that he has gone to Max's house and decides to go after him, finding Santiago tinkering with some of his inventions. Concerned, the woman asks about her children and the scientist tells her that they are in the garage playing with the time machine, which makes Sue extremely worried. To reassure her, Santiago takes the woman to the garage to have a look and realizes that both the children and the time machine have disappeared, leaving the egg of a Tyrannosaurus in their place. Impressed, the scientist says that this means they have traveled back in time and are now stuck in the middle of the Cretaceous period, which makes Sue extremely nervous and starts an argument between them. While the female T-Rex teaches the children how to survive in the jungle, Sue comes up with the idea of creating a new time machine so that they can personally go after her children, and although she thinks this is a good option, Santiago says that it took 4 years to develop the first version. Still, they have no choice and start modifying Sue's car to turn it into a time machine, but things don't work out and they end up blowing up the first prototype. In the past, Ernie wakes up in the middle of the night and tries to sneak out to look for the power key, but Tyra notices and catches him in the act, putting him to sleep under her body. When she wakes up, Julia sees her brother and starts laughing at him, taking a souvenir photo, but when she goes to analyze the image, the girl notices the footprints of the birds and realizes that someone is watching them. Following the tracks, the girl goes to the bush where the dino birds are hiding, but she can't find them because they've climbed a tree. At that moment, Ernie sees that the footprints have come from the river and calls his sister to follow the tracks, but Tyra refuses to let them go alone and decides to accompany them, leaving the time machine alone in the nest. Taking advantage of the moment, The birds grab what they think is the egg and start carrying it to the siblings, but one of them slips and is hit hard by the machine, which makes him throw the key out. Without imagining that the machine is being taken, Julia and the others follow the tracks until they reach the entrance to the lower valley, but as soon as they suggest going down to investigate, Tyra refuses to allow it and pushes them back towards the nest, clearing the way for the birds to escape with the egg. After a long walk, they finally arrive home and find the power key on the floor, but Ernie ends up letting it slip that it was he who lost the object, and both Julia and Max are furious with him, claiming that because of their thirst for adventure, they were forced to stay in the past at the risk of being devoured. At that moment, Tyra realizes that the machine has been taken and Julia starts crying, saying that they will never go home again, as well as blaming Ernie for everything. In the lower valley, the Sarko brothers begin to complain that Tyra hasn't come after the egg and order the birds to return to capture one of the babies. That way, the female will surely come to the rescue and they will finally be able to eliminate her. At the top of the valley, Ernie begins to think about what to do and comes up with the idea of leaving a message that his mother can see more than 65 million years into the future. To do this, the boy plans to go to Mystery Rock and carve a sign to show Max's father that he should pour soda into the time machine. In the present, Sue and Santiago finally finish making the modifications and decide to test the car to start the launch sequence, but nothing happens. Out of ideas, the two argue about what to do when Tyra's egg starts to break and hatches right in front of them, releasing a Tyrannosaurus onto the streets of a modern city. In the past, Ernie and Dodger climb Mystery Rock while the birds hide out waiting for an opportunity to catch one of the babies. As soon as Tyra lets her guard down, they capture Julia and start running back down the valley while the female chases them. Refusing to lose his sister, Ernie leaves Dodger in charge of carving the sign and jumps off the rock, chasing the kidnappers with his skateboard. But as soon as he reaches the lower valley, some pterodactyls also join in and start flying after the boy. In order to lose them, the boy makes several super risky maneuvers that cause the flying dinos to crash into the ravine, but as he is outnumbered, the predators get closer and closer to catching Ernie. About to be swallowed up, the boy turns on the skateboard's turbo mode, which leaves a trail of fire behind, burning the pterosaur's mouth. However, the fire also hits the log he is standing on and the boy is forced to use the predator's wings as a parachute. In midair, the pterodactyl manages to break free and Ernie uses the skateboard's thruster to accelerate towards a cave in the canyon. On the other side of the valley, Tyra finally meets Julia, who warns her that it's a trap, but the female can't understand her and only realizes when Godzilla's cousins show up. To defend her calf, the female doesn't shy away and starts fighting with the two crocodiles while Max is captured by the birds, making the T-Rex's situation even more difficult. At this point, Ernie finally arrives at the cave and finds Tyra completely cornered, using his helmet as an amplifier to roar and distract the villain, allowing the T-Rex mother to push them both away and take both Julia and Max with her. Back in the present, the adults are driving through Dino Land when they find the T-Rex baby causing chaos on the city streets. To attract him, Sue has the idea of stopping at a drive-thru and ordering 50 hamburger and soda combos, using the food to lure the baby into the car and lock him in a transport box. 65 million years in the past, Ernie is found by birds who begin to chase him through the gorge, managing to trap him after just a few meters. With nowhere to run, the boy leans against a rock wall as he watches the trio approach, until suddenly, the shadow of a gigantic head appears behind the human and the birds jump out of the canyon in fright, getting stuck in the tar. As soon as they fall, Dodger comes out of his skull and reveals that he was the one who scared the chickens, following Ernie through the cave until they find Tyra and the others. Happy, they celebrate their reunion until Sarko reappears, forcing the female T-Rex to confront the brothers to protect her family. Just then, an earthquake strikes and the cave begins to collapse, dropping countless rocks on the time machine. Knowing that it's only a matter of time before they're buried, Julia grabs her brother's arms and starts pulling him towards the device, putting the key in the ignition and finally turning the machine back on. But just as the capsule is about to close, one of the crocodiles approaches and hits the egg, causing them to sink into the tar. Desperate, Max begins to program the machine so that they can move forward in time before it's too late, but Ernie knows that Tyra won't be able to win on her own and convinces his friends to open the egg, saying that it's their responsibility to save their Tyrannosaur mother. As the device sinks into the resin, Ernie grabs his skateboard and goes all out on the Sarcophagus, drawing the attention of the crocodilians so that Tyra can hit them. At that moment, another earthquake hits and a lot of magma vapor starts coming out of the cracks in the ground, leaving Max trapped in the hot air. In order to save his adopted brother, Dodger jumps in the face of the hooded alligator and is easily thrown into the air, having to hold on to the stalactites to avoid falling to the ground. About to slip, The bird starts jumping from one rock to another, knocking the stone thorns into the crocodile's face. At that moment, the ground begins to tilt and the crocodile almost manages to swallow them, but at the last second, Julia uses the flash on her cell phone to blind the crocodile and Ernie throws his skateboard into its mouth, activating the thrusters that send it flying from one side of the cave to the other until it sinks into the magma. To avenge his brother, the remaining crocodile advances towards the children, but Tyra manages to catch him by the tail and throws him against a rock pillar, causing the entire structure of the cave to cave in and tons of rocks to fall on them. Thanks to her protective instincts, the female rushes at the babies and uses her own body as a shield, sacrificing herself to keep the children safe and sound. Back in the present, Santiago is losing hope when Sue sees the engraving that Dodger made at Mystery Rock, but while trying to understand the message, she is startled by a cyclist who passes near the car and ends up spilling some soda on the power key. Just then, a small short circuit happens and they go back a minute in time, making Sue finally understand the engraving. In the cave, Sarko wakes up and begins to advance slowly towards the children, but just as he is about to attack, the adults arrive with a time machine that scares the predator away. Happy to be reunited, Sue and Santiago get out of the car and run to hug their children, but the crocodile is still thirsty and jumps at them. Forcing Tyra to jump over the family to save them, she hits the predator in the ribs in midair. Determined to protect her young, the T-Rex advances towards Sarko for the final big battle, but despite being extremely strong, she takes a blow that knocks her to the ground, giving the toothy alligator a chance to bite her neck. About to fall unconscious, Tyra sees the boys and manages to gather her last strength to throw Sarko away, knocking him into the scalding tar. Victorious, the female Tyrannosaurus turns to her family and Sue begins to confront her, thinking that she wants to devour her children, but Ernie and Julia manage to convince her that the T-Rex is totally harmless. Observing the humans, Tyra notices that her babies are smaller versions of Sue and Santiago and finally realizes that they are not her offspring, returning them to their real parents. Just then, Max's father remembers that they have the Tyrannosaurus baby and hands it over to the female, making Tyra very happy to see her son for the first time. Soon after the reunion, the cave collapses again and the humans run back to the car, driving at top speed to avoid being buried by the rocks in the lower valley. By some miracle, they all manage to get out alive and return to the nest where the children say goodbye to their dinosaur mother, get into the time machine and finally return to the future. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.